we're just going to do straight Q&A. Ready? Quinn, you want to start?
Hi, Mayor. Good morning. Various tenant groups have called for an eviction moratorium during the wave of ICE raids and immigration enforcement that we're seeing. Is that something you support at the city level, a citywide eviction moratorium until this operation ends?
Well, I know that there are a number of people who are organizing collectively for tenants' rights. That's something that I do believe that we should take a deeper look at. As you know, a month ago or 2 months ago, we passed an agreement to protect tenants who are surrounded by the development of the Obama Center, right? And so that was an important part of my administration to ensure that working people are not being forced out or pushed out because of development. As far as a moratorium on evictions is something that I'm willing to look into, but I don't have all of the details surrounding that particular ask.
Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino is in front of a federal judge this morning. What do you want to hear from him about ICE and immigration Border Patrol enforcement that's been going on in Chicago?
Well, the Trump administration has a strong proclivity to lie. I'm not quite sure if we hear anything from him will reflect truth. The Trump administration said that they were going to go after the worst of the worst, like criminals, individuals who have caused harm, and that's not what's happening. And so what is happening, though, is Bovino is a barbaric individual. And I just hope that this judge provides some level of accountability, because that's not what's happening right now.
Hi, Mayor. Your office put out some more details on like the methodology of getting to 100 million in revenue from the head tax, where they got the data of how many companies might have over 100 employees. It wasn't included in this, but was there also an attempt to figure out how many of those companies have 100 employees who work or spend over 50% of their time in Chicago? Was that included in the methodology to get the revenue figure?
Well, that's the configuration of the actual ordinance or provision.
But in trying to determine how much revenue you might get from it, did you attempt to figure out how many employees are spending 50% of their time in Chicago at these companies?
So we looked at the last time that this tax was in place in the city of Chicago. It applied to companies that had 50 or more employees in the city of Chicago. And a lot of those entities still exist and are still domiciled in the city of Chicago, or frankly a resident of the city. And so we extrapolated from the information that we had and based on that.
Obviously, the business community is trying to communicate to moderates that we won't negotiate. We don't want it lowered from $21 or higher exemptions. If they're able or aldermen want to strip it out of the budget, is there a plan B that you will turn to? Will you put it on city council to figure out how to replace it? Where do discussions go from there if that happens?
Well, that sounds awfully unreasonable on the part of the business community, and their hard line against funding community safety it doesn't really reflect the values of the city of Chicago. As you know, this past summer in particular, we saw the safest summer since 1965. And as the #1 issue that we all agree upon, community safety, asking and challenging the largest corporations in the city of Chicago that received an incredible tax benefit from the Trump administration to support our CVI programs, our community violence intervention workers. This is something that has shown in many communities a reduction as high as 40 to 45% in shootings and shooting victims. The largest corporations who are being asked to put more skin in the game, not wanting to support our domestic violence survivors, youth employment, and the mental health of our police officers is something that I believe they should do some real soul searching, particularly at a time in which we have made some gains, but by no means should we run a victory lap. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if the state of Illinois wasn't gobbling up all of the revenue from corporations through loopholes and diversions, we wouldn't, quite frankly, need this conversation. There is an opportunity for us to do something pretty special in the city of Chicago. Make the critical investments so that we can build safe and affordable communities, and that's what my focus is going to remain.
Mayor Johnson, last week I asked you about an illegal alien from Nicaragua who beat a Chicago woman unconscious and raped her on a Chicago sidewalk, and you didn't answer the question. Millions of people shared the video, liked it, commented that you were a coward for not answering the question. Now the Department of Homeland Security has shared the video, racking up additional millions of views on that video.
All right, we need the question, William.
And the Department of Homeland Security
No preamble,
has
just
called
the
you
question.
a coward.
Just the question. Go ahead.
The Department of Homeland Security has called you a coward for hiding behind 150
right.
police detail, sworn Chicago police officer detail, while you and your wife Stacy
William.
are safe. I'll ask you again. If that had been your wife Stacy, what would you do? Would you allow the ICE to remove this violent offender from the streets of Chicago? Yes or no?
Invoking the name of my wife is out of bounds. If you want to ask that question in another way, I'm happy to answer it. But your intentional provocation to invoke my wife in this situation is apprehensible and reprehensible.
What if that woman who was beaten and raped, what if she was somebody's wife, but who didn't have a 150 sworn police officer detail?
We got it. Thank
What would
you.
you say to
Thank you.
that woman and her husband today? Do you have anything to say to the victim?
All right, thanks, William.
Do you have anything to say to the victim?
Any individual that commits a crime in this country should be held accountable.
Thanks, William.
Will you turn him over to ICE? Will you,
Thank you,
will
William.
you suggest
We're
that
gonna go to Sarah. Thank you.
Nicaraguan illegal
Thank you.
alien will be turned over to ICE?
We're going
Thanks,
to Sarah.
William.
Thank you for your question.
Back to the budget. You have a group of alders that are down there in Springfield. Do you think the expectation is they're not going to get much out of Springfield? Do you think it's a little too late to have a group of alders go down there? Should they have gone down there sooner?
So when we have multiple conversations with the governor's office, with the Senate president, with the Speaker of the House, when we have gone down to Springfield on multiple occasions from the very moment in which, before I was even sworn in, this idea of too late, not soon enough, I'm having a tough time, quite frankly, understanding this notion that somehow advocating on behalf of the people of Chicago that there's some sort of end or start date. There's no end or start date when it comes to advocating on behalf of the people of Chicago. Look, I work every day. I advocate hard every day. Now, there are some people say that they've accused us of not being down there. And then when they're down there, we're saying that we shouldn't be down there. I mean, look, we have to, as a city and a state, protect working people from Donald Trump's cuts. That's it. Now, I've heard repeatedly that the state of Illinois is committed to progressive revenue to fund our transportation system, to fund our education system, to commit to community safety. We work hard every single day to continue to make the case for working people in Chicago. It is always timely to engage with our legislators in Springfield.
If they don't have any luck down there, and you're not going to have any luck with your head tax, what is Plan B? And will you at all consider talking to the unions about possible cuts and furloughs if there's no other option?
Well, you've certainly presented a very doomsday scenario, haven't you? But you're right. You saw $1 trillion cut from Medicaid and handed into the hands of the ultra-rich. SNAP benefits are going to be cut off in a couple of days. You know, this is a very uneasy time for working people in Chicago. For so long, we have constantly asked working people to accept less. That's not what my ask is in this moment. It's not. We've balanced budgets off the backs of working people. I'm going to defend the working people in this city with everything that I have inside of me, every bit. And it's worthwhile fighting for working people, particularly at a time in which we're seeing education cut from the federal government, healthcare cut from the federal government, jobs that are being cut from the federal government, food that's being cut. We should really be talking about how do we protect those families, not about how we add more burden and pressure on them. Does that make any sense it doesn't make any sense to me that we would ask those families to shoulder even more of a burden, especially at a time when the ultra-rich are getting richer. We are literally having a discussion right now about whether or not billionaires should exist, and we're about to see the first trillionaire. It's the best time ever to be a billionaire, the best time ever. And asking them to put more skin in the game, I believe that's it's a good democratic value to adhere to.
Good morning. You talked about the judge hoping that she can sort of get some accountability from Greg Bovino today. I want to mention 3 things that happened in just the last half hour in court, and I want to see if these sort of move the ball in any way from your perspective. 3 things she's asking for. Number 1, she wants all use of force reports and body-worn camera footage since September 2nd by the end of the week. I guess that's 1 and 2. And that she wants Bovino in court every weekday between now and November 5th for an in-person update. Does that do anything to help assuage your concerns of a lack of accountability?
Well, to start, I don't know if there's anything that's going to assuage my apprehension or even, quite frankly, my rejection of their approach, simply because, as I said, it has been incredibly gruesome of how this administration has executed in this particular season, but it certainly is a start in the right direction.
As far as the head tax is concerned, the chief impact officer from McDonald's in an op-ed in the Tribune called your proposal unprecedented and punitive. We, McDonald's and the corporate community, have been blindsided by backroom political deals rather than being engaged as a cherished community asset. Businesses like ours are demonized by local leaders. How do you react to that?
I have never met anybody who's demonized McDonald's. I mean, in fact, even though I'm committed to staying healthy, I'm still loving it. I am. So I don't know what he's referring to. What I will say, though, is the CEO and I agree that what makes the most business sense is to have a safe city. We agree on that. And since safety is his #1 priority, it's my #1 priority, here's an opportunity for us to come together to actually fund our priority. What are we funding? The mental health of our police officers. What else are we funding? Providing support for survivors of domestic violence. We're going to hire over 30,000 young people with this revenue. That's another thing that we have in common. McDonald's and the city of Chicago were committed to hiring young people. By the way, it wasn't one of my early jobs. I was more of an Arby's Subway guy. But you get my point, though. But we're also going to make sure that we're invested in CVI, which many corporate leaders have said that this is a strategy to drive violence down. Now, look, here's a way in which we can partner, because it seems like you heard from one of your colleagues that they've taken such a hard position against investing in Chicago. Think about it. $100 million is going to go to law enforcement, CVI, young people, and domestic violence survivors, to actually help repair the reputational harm that has been caused by Donald Trump. Now, we saw the busiest summer ever with our airports. We had hotel occupancy higher than any other time in the history of Chicago. Lollapalooza, the biggest ever, $20 billion plus in full social impact from tourism. And we had the safest summer since 1965. Now, that's a really good recipe for success. It's going to take all of us to come together to show up so that we can build safe and affordable communities. Because I'm going to build the safest, most affordable big city in America. I'm determined to do it. And the best way we do it is that we invest in people and asking our corporate partners to put a little bit more skin in the game so that we don't continue to balance budgets off the backs of working people. I think that's a reasonable service and expectation.
Morning, Mayor Johnson.
Good morning.
Thank you for the lore drop, by the way. I was wondering if your first job was at McDonald's. I want to talk quickly about the partial federal government shutdown. Thousands of federal government workers in Chicago obviously are affected. Can you talk at all about what the city might be doing to step up assistance for those folks who may be in need during this period of inertia in Washington?
This is a very difficult time for public employees and working people, but this has been the effort of right-wing leadership for a very long time in this country. Remember, it was President Ronald Reagan that began to attack public employees at the federal level. In fact, it was President Ronald Reagan that declared war on American cities in 1986 when Mayor Harold Washington was the mayor. So this is a fundamental element of their project, and the dismissive nature of their approach and their calculated animus towards working people is egregious and reprehensible. So what are we doing? We're making sure that we put forth the budget that protects working people. That's the first thing. And then we'll look at other options to work with, you know, whether it's Chicago Food Depository or other local entities that provide, you know, support from community-based organizations to figure out how we can support and bring people together and fund some temporary stopgaps to support these families to the best of our ability. But I'm going to go first as the leader of this city to put forth the budget that challenges these individuals that are benefiting from this right-wing extremism in this country, and to ensure that we're protecting all of Chicago. That's why my team is in Springfield yet again to work with our partners there to ensure that education, housing, healthcare, transportation, jobs, that we're making the necessary investments to protect as many people as we possibly can.
And quickly on the delegation in Springfield, and kind of to follow up on Sarah's question, is there a particular punch list that those folks have with them, and how will you measure the success of that trip when they get back and in the days to come?
Look, this is an effort that's statewide. I just want to be very clear. You know, we're already seeing local municipalities going to the state of Illinois looking for real support because they just can't sustain their local economy. And I believe we're just seeing the beginning of an incredibly profound impact that the federal government's cuts is going to continue to have on local municipalities. And so the success is going to be on whether or not Springfield is committed, like cities are, to put forth progressive revenue to protect working people, right? Look, they had 33 proposals last year for progressive revenue. They got 3 across the finish line. Now, as a public school teacher, I will give credit to anyone who makes an attempt at completing their assignment. There's a little bit more work to do there, right? So I just want you to keep in mind, of those 33 ideas, the vast majority of them are coming from individuals who represent Chicago. This is not, this is a group project. This is a group project, and so it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that working people across this state, particularly in the very city that generates the economic vibrancy for the entire state, to be successful, because it's a matter of life and death for many of these families. Without health care, people will die. They will. And without access to food, more children will go to bed hungry. That's a problem. As a father, as a husband, as someone who has come from a working class family, when the ends did not always meet, I know what it's like to open up a refrigerator and there's no food in it. It's embarrassing, it's humiliating, it's degrading. That's not the type of life that I want for my children. It's certainly not the life that I want for other people's children. And so my team is working hard every single day to ensure that we're provoking the conversation to ensure that everyday people can access the very fundamentals of life. And that's food, shelter, education, transportation, good paying jobs, and healthcare.
Morning.
Good morning.
Considering that FBAs and even non-FBAs find your illegal alien slave comparison Lost in Space cadet out of this world, and also considering what Malcolm X said about white liberal racism being the death of blacks, how is blocking Willie Wilson from empowering some 17,000 Chicago Housing Authority seniors with food and nonpartisan voting registration during a government shutdown, by the way, and led by Democrats, and your Democratic allies blocking him from testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee on what he feels is the need for militarized federal intervention in Chicagoland, not nasty and racist?
All right, I'm going to try to answer the last part of the question. Dehumanizing people is dangerous, and it is nasty, and it is racist. And what we cannot allow as a country, but more broadly as humanity, we cannot allow people to be dehumanized, because what it does is it opens up viciousness. Because if they're not seen as human beings, then whatever you do against them can be justified. And no one is going to convince me what the Trump administration is doing against black people and brown people can ever be justified. It is racist. When you bombard into people's homes in the middle of the night and you take black babies out of their bed and you zip tie them, that's sick. That's what Dr. King, I'm going to answer the question. That's what Dr. King described as militarism. No, you had a full conclave of questions here, very professorial.
Willie Wilson,
okay.
Him being blocked from giving seniors at their convenience food and voter registration, and also abridging his First Amendment rights. And that we can't not believe that the Illinois political establishment didn't have anything to do with him being the only person cut from the list of witnesses to testify in front of the judiciary.
All right, so for the nastiness and the racist, let me finish that point, is that when you have black babies being thrown in the back of vans, zip-tied in the middle of the night, and masked men sticking guns in the faces of black and brown people, that is nasty, is vicious, is racist. Dr. King described it as an evil. Militarism and that formation is an evil. Second thing, as far as Dr. Willie Wilson and his philanthropic prowess, I would love to be able to have a conversation to figure out how we can work together to do just that. We have to get people more active politically, and we certainly have to show up collectively. And what I would also like Dr. Willie Wilson to help me with is to convince other corporate leaders to put more skin in the game and pay their fair share in taxes. All right, thank you.
Get to the next question.
Okay.
Wait a minute. He wanted to know that, wait a minute.
Mark,
wait
a minute. We already did wait a minute.
You've asked several questions, Mark.
No, I asked one more.
No.
Mark,
It's not fair
that
to
was
everybody
not
else.
one question.
Mark, it's not fair to everybody else.
All right,
We gotta
hold
keep
on,
it
just okay, real quick. If you could do,
Everybody else gets to do different things.
if you could do a real quick, Mark.
Strokes for different folks.
No, it's just a. I got it, you all.
This is the last question.
Just real quick.
How do you solely blame riotous protesters trashing predominantly black, middle-class Broadview on Donald Trump when you and J.B. Pritzker whipped up divisive provocateurs to do that from the ICE facility to the Broadview Village Hall? I mean, they repeatedly disrupted her meeting, that is Katrina Thompson, and insulted her directly when she called out their ratchet behavior and maintained that it was her job to protect her village.
I understand your question. You know, Mayor Katrina Thompson and I have a relationship that goes back to the time in which I was a Cook County Commissioner. You know that. And, you know, I think that, again, she has been placed in a situation by the federal government that has put a lot of people at risk. Now, I have repeatedly called for peaceful demonstrations, that the First Amendment applies to individuals who are willing to stay within the confines of the law. Anyone who steps outside of that should be held accountable. So I don't, you know, I don't support disruptive and out of control behavior. I don't believe that's productive for our democracy. Thank you all very much.
So you have no problems with ICE defending itself then when they provoke?
Mark, we have to go to Marion. Thank you.
Nice job.
I'm not often the welcome guest, so I'm glad to be next. Back to the budget.
Okay.
Question about Gene and Giorgetti's, which has a concession at Midway Airport. They're 5 years into a 20-year lease. They've been notified that their lease is done, although they have this agreement for a much longer lease. And they believe that it appears to be linked to the city of Chicago wanting to install gaming venues at airports. Could we get your reaction to that, and that it is tied to your budget shortfall?
It's not. So I don't know how they've come to that conclusion. That is a wild stretch. A wild stretch. That is not. It's not tied to our budget. In fact, we all know that our revenue from the casino is underperforming dramatically, quite frankly. That's why this budget reflects challenging the corporations to put more skin in the game. But I don't know why this person came to that conclusion, but they're off in their assessment.
But there is a question of just ending this lease with no, when they have a 20-year agreement to be there.
So what we can do is we can have our Commissioner of Aviation have a conversation with you to get through the specifics there.
Could I ask you just one other separate one? I know you were in Baltimore over the weekend, and also have learned that you did attend the Ravens game and Bears. Because their stadium is right downtown, there are two stadiums next to each other, I just wondered if there was a takeaway for you from seeing these the stadium operating, thriving, that might be useful as you try to keep the stadium here in Chicago.
No.
There was no, what, did you enjoy it?
The Bears lost. Hey, look, Brandon Scott has done a remarkable job with his community safety plan. They're in their 5th year of their community safety plan. What's interesting is that when he put forth his community safety plan, that detractors said that it would take years before the benefit of those investments would take shape. And we saw the opposite there. Same thing here. The real big takeaway, it had nothing to do with the Bears. The real big takeaway is that we're 2 years into our community safety plan that, we've expressed repeatedly that homicides are down, shootings are down, shooting victims are down, vehicular carjackings are down. His youth employment numbers are up as well. He's working with CVI. What we've been able to accomplish in the city of Chicago is a remarkable testament to all of us coming together. And what do I mean by that? The organizing around the country with CVI, people use the CVI model in Chicago to build and stand up their CVI programs in cities across America. You know what the big difference was, though? Is that their leaders, their mayors, their police chiefs were willing to work with CVI. We haven't had that. So this is a newer formation, right? A good conversation that's worthwhile having is with Fred Waller. He shared my former interim CEO, where he talked about, never did he ever imagine that he would be working to drive violence down with people that he arrested, right? So we had to shift the culture here dramatically. So my big takeaway is that the work that we're doing, that quite frankly motivated people around the country, it is about time that we continue to come together as a business community, philanthropic community, government, to make the necessary investments. And then, hopefully the other big takeaway is that man, we just find a way to get to the playoffs. But the good news, though, is, Marianne, is that the Bulls are 3-0. So how about that? We get excited about the Bulls. Nobody's excited about the Bulls yet. Well, I am. Thank you all very much. Are we good? All right. Appreciate you all. Thank you.